MSNBC's Chuck Todd will step down from Meet the Press in the coming months, and NBC's co-chief White House correspondent, Kristen Welker, will become the new host. Now let's hear what Chuck Todd had to say in his announcement during a broadcast yesterday.
This is going to be my final summer here at Meet the Press. It's been an amazing, nearly decade-long run. I'm really proud of what this team and I have built over the last decade, and frankly, the last 15-plus years that I've been here at NBC, which also includes my time as political director. I've loved so much of this job, helping to explain America to Washington and explain Washington to America. When I took over Meet the Press, it was a Sunday show that had a lot of people questioning whether it could still have a place in the modern media space. Well, I think we've answered that question and then some. We've taken Meet the Press from a single Sunday show to a distinct and important political franchise.
According to NBC, Todd plans to remain at NBC in a new role as chief political analyst. All right, is this indicative of the kind of shakeups we've seen in an effort to improve market share at these companies? Do you think this is just a personnel change, and will it have any kind of significant impact on the credibility of the news, et cetera? I mean, what do you make of this one?
Look, he's been at it for a long time. It's exhausting to do a daily show, as we're finding out, right? He might. Look, I think he just could be ready to do something else, and it's as simple as that. He's gonna, he'll still be involved in the network, just not as regularly as he's doing things. It sounds like he's leaving of his own accord, right? He's still doing it. He's still gonna do it all summer. If it was the network, wanting to end things with him, it'd be ending much more rapidly, as far as I can tell, based on all the recent departures and shakeups there's been in cable news. It seems like when they're done with you, they're done with you. Your final show is tomorrow, or maybe it was yesterday and we didn't tell you. So I just kind of take him at his word that he's kind of done with it, and he's passing it on to another person. Now, I think Chuck Todd, regardless of what your opinions are of his commentary, his journalism, is kind of a known name. Probably people watch for him and for who he is, and I'm not sure he can hand that off to just anyone, but I don't really know. Maybe that's just a theory. That could be totally wrong.
Well, he's being replaced by Kristen Welker, who is also at NBC News, a familiar face to people who turn on that channel. I was looking at Chuck Todd's trajectory to this position, and it seems like it was, he dropped out of college, worked for some not especially notable political campaigns, wrote for some publications, was brought in to the fold, by other journalists. It is the kind of career that I think a lot of people can't imagine accessing today, when, for better or worse, there's like a different kind of credentialism and expectations of these kind of news hosts. You compare someone like Rachel Maddow, who was venerated for being a Rhodes Scholar, with Chuck Todd, who had a much more less traditional trajectory into the news.
Oh, you mean he doesn't have as impressive a pedigree, is what you're saying?
Right, or having jumped the hurdles that, given the more crowded field, you wouldn't necessarily expect. But also, wasn't necessarily known for being especially charismatic or dynamic or having a big personality like a Keith Olbermann type either. So he did occupy an odd space.
He's like a politics nerd, right? He's a details guy who just knows politics and loves politics.
Sure. Is he a details guy? Does he know a lot about politics, or is that kind of the presumption of someone who's been around politics for a little bit of time?
He knows a lot about the horse race element of it, right? The pollster type stuff. The politics as sport.
Yeah, well,
I'm not, which I'm kind of denigrating as I'm describing here, and you're right, not a commanding.
It's the Beltway guy.
It's the view from nowhere.
Exactly, it's the kind of guy who came up through, working on a campaign and working on some magazines, and who has had that lens in this role for a time. So he's not going far. It seems he'll be around. It'll be interesting to see if there's any difference at all when you look at Kristen Welker and what she does with the show. But it's also worth noting that Chuck Todd was a big misinformation guy. I don't know if you remember that colloquy he had about alternative facts.
That's where it started, right? That was with Kellyanne Conway, I believe, former advisor to President Trump, commenting on that was Sean Spicer, I believe, was the press secretary at the time for Donald Trump. And she was having an argument with Chuck Todd about it, and Chuck Todd made some claim. I don't even remember what the underlying issue was about.
Me either.
And she said that, well, Sean Spicer had presented alternative facts to alternative to what you had said, and then he kind of had a high horse moment where he was like, well, their alternative facts are just lies. There are no alternative facts. There's just facts. But that's kind of like, that's missing the point that we disagree, or they were disagreeing, and people just in general disagree on what the underlying facts are. In fact, well-informed and smart people can disagree.
That can happen, and sometimes people lie.
Yeah.
And there's no factual record to support what they're saying. So,
right. This was about the size of the Trump square.
Of the Trump square. That's what all of this was about. So yes, sometimes people just lie to save face. But that does feel in retrospect like this weird historical turning point, and how we talked about the news. So much language was minted during that Trump era. So Chuck Todd certainly has made his mark in some ways. We'll see how history bears that out in the longer term. And it's worth noting also that leading up to this announcement that there was some reporting on the idea that ratings had been flailing somewhat. He says in his announcement in the segment that we just watched, we've answered that question. Could the show survive in the contemporary media cycle? Well, we've answered that question and then some. But how have you answered that question exactly? The show obviously persists and it has grown in certain ways, but also has been suffering from the same kind of ratings crises that the industry as a whole has been suffering from. So I do think that there's a lot ahead of Kristen Welker in terms of being able to keep this ship afloat.
I would also put Chuck Todd in the category of journalists who, for better or worse, treated Trump and the people who accompanied him in the White House, the broader Trump environment, as so pathologically dishonest that it was like an exception. Like the alternative facts was part of that. Like this is beyond the pale. This is a level of lying that no political figure has ever engaged in. That you're right. You can have your opinion, but if your opinion is misinformation, that's harmful to the health of democracy. That kind of thing, that from my point of view is very cloying and very catastrophizing everything, and lost credibility with viewers who maybe recognize that, Trump is exaggerating all sorts of things and lying about all sorts of really petty things. But what about the significant lies that have been sold to the American people by political figures in both parties, by previous Republican administrations with the support of Democrats, George Bush and Hillary Clinton, everybody getting together to say Iraq would be a great idea and we have to do this, and they'll greet us as liberators, and they have weapons of mass destruction, and it'll be easy cleanup. We'll have a stable democracy in the Middle East. Yeah. The most significant political, tactical, strategic policy mistake in our lifetimes, perhaps. And that was treated as, here's what people think. But then Trump, this is disinformation, deadly, scary. Can't normalize it.
The thing about the Trump lies, like for the example, the crowd size ones, is that they're so blatant that they get people's heckles up. And it does cause folks to lose a sense of proportionality. And that is one of his political gifts, I gotta say, whether it's strategic and purposeful or not. He is very adept at getting people to focus on the things that aren't ever going to really take him down because they're petty. And if you like him, you're not going to stop liking him because of something like that. Right. But it is a really great distraction from the more substantive issues. And people like Chuck Todd have fallen for that over the last 5 or 6 years or so. So we'll see if this is a new changing of the guard.
A thorough roasting of Chuck Todd that I didn't even know we had in us. But here we go. Tomorrow on Rising, Bree and I will be right back here. Same rising time, same rising place to bring you the biggest news of the day.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who prefer to listen while you're on the go, we are now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
See you tomorrow. Take care.
Bye-bye.